Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. And this is day 16 of Russians' illegal incursion into the Ukraine. We've been doing this every day since this kicked off. We cover the news of the day, the important highlights of the events, because I believe this is history in the making. I don't have very many panelists today, but I do have a lot of poignant stories. But we may be able to get through this relatively quickly, so I don't tie up your Friday evening. Anyway, some of you may have noticed that things tend to get a little heated around here uh, during our discussions. Make no mistake, though. I mean, there's no ill will. No ill will. We may have differing opinions, but we all mean well at the end of the day. So, if anyone got the impression that I was upset or emotions run high, it tends to happen from time to time. But I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. And that thing is basically we don't want what's going on. But for me, it's important just to cover it. So, anyway, it's Friday. It is day 16. I have updated the casualty statistics, and I have updated the battle map, and I even changed the layout just ever so slightly, just to give you guys something different to look at. Anyway, let me fix this because apparently I've got my layout a little jacked up. So sorry about that. Let me fix that. I didn't have really a chance to proof check it, so to speak. It's my own failing. There we go. Okay, that's more symmetric. Yeah. Anyway, I it looks like I don't have a whole lot of stories for you just because today's events were the few events that we did have were pretty major, but there weren't very many of them. For those of you who don't know, the siege and battle of Kyiv has begun, and it's ugly. I woke up this morning to the news of something that I was hoping wouldn't have happened because it sort of turned into a I told you so moment. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's not that I told you individually so. It's just, I had this idea of what was going to happen, and it happened, and now I'm not very happy that I was forward thinking enough to see it coming. But anyway, uh, to spare you the long intros and psycho babble, I'm going to bring in apparently the only panelist I've got today. So this is Scottish Naya, also known as Scott P79, formerly of Gun Channels when we used to have a Gun Channels. And what I'm trying to desperately put together as a hub for former Gun Channels members. So if you didn't know, the links for my server and the discussion are in the description below. If you'd like to join, I think there's enough invite codes left in that link to hop into the server, and I would respectfully request you add your original Gun Channels username if you're from back there, just so I can recognize you, and then you can change it to whatever you want so I know who the new you are. But at least in the meantime, just do it just so I know who it is. So anyway, this is Scott. He is my um, tradesman up near the New England area, and he's here to give me some unique insight, or to keep me from biting off anyone's head if they don't share my insight, I guess. Anyway, good evening to you.
Evening.
All right, so apparently I don't have a Mikhail Knightstritsky because I scared him off, because I told him today would be the episode where I would make him present the stories in a certain block of time, and it's become very evident that he's afraid to do so. So I guess we're going to do it the typical old-fashioned way. I was hoping to set up the show so each panelist can present a few stories each. That way it's a little more well-rounded, but I guess he couldn't do that or wouldn't do that. I don't know. Maybe he's just running late. We'll see. And then my college student out in the West Coast, he's got class tonight, so he gets a pass. Anyway, we have a few stories for you today, as we usually do. I have a few pictures for you today, as I usually do. Um, this has been something that we've been doing every day for the last 16. Today would be the episode 16, so we've been doing this every day just because I thought it was history in the making. And I've literally put everything else on my channel on hold. So we don't have our usual week in review, but if you are new to my channel, I typically host a show called The Week in Review, where it's more just 2A news type things, and we usually cover them on Saturdays. Um, Hopefully someday when this event ends, we can go back to regular scheduled programming. But to be fair, just so in case you were wondering, if you follow my Penny Arcades only, that's kind of on hiatus during all this. But if you are part of my 2A community, I've already pre-recorded the next 5 episodes of gun reviews. So this Sunday, permitting any delays or power outages, I do have another video for that coming out, and it's sort of a complimentary piece to last week's episode, including my newly acquired Colt Anaconda. So stay tuned for that. Stick around for that because Sunday's episode, I promise you, will not disappoint. It's something even more outlandish than the Anaconda because you probably haven't seen one, or if you have, you probably haven't seen very many of them. But it was the second gun I ever bought, and I'm sure you'll like it. So all that out of the way. Um, let's go ahead and get started with the news. I suspect that because I have less panelists to work with today, and because I have fewer stories, we'll probably get through this pretty quickly, and then you can go on about your lives on a Friday night, because I know I have things to do too. So let's go ahead and just get started. Let's get right into it. If you weren't here earlier, I'm just going to update your information. The scroller below is the latest Russian casualty statistics for today. I don't keep track of the Ukrainian statistics because I don't want them to lose. I want the Russians to lose. And if you are Ukrainian and you are watching, then I would like to say to you, Slava Ukraini. And then you can reply to me, here I am, Slava. So, yes, I do speak your language, slightly. Although I did study Russian, so you might say something that I don't recognize, and you have my apologies. So anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and move on, and I'll probably close the show with the same phrase, just because I like it, and it's meaningful, so we'll probably do that at the end of the show anyway. People have lives. Well, ma'am, in your case, your life revolves around a little nugget that has a body temperature of about 100 degrees, and he's probably tugging on your underwire to remind you that, hey, I gotta eat 5 times a day. So your life is that. But I'm glad that you got to take a break from your life to spend time with us as we waste our lives on this. So, Gunpowder Beauty, good evening. And I know I've said this before, but congratulations on your absolutely wonderful bundle of joy. I did see your pictures and I think it's fantastic. So I'm really happy for you. That being said, and enough of flattering the audience, because I've got a dirty, grubby little Hatfield out in the audience. Sorry, it's a joke. Like, he knows I'm not serious. Let's go ahead and get started, because we do have some things to cover. The first story I have, as per tradition, starts to take place after the events of the last show, despite the fact that the last show bleeds into the following day of the war. So, for me, it's Central Standard Time. They're 8 hours ahead of me. So, a couple of things I will share with you at the end of every episode actually bleeds into the following day. But that being said, we'll push that a little further because obviously the first story of the day for me now that I'm going to share with you, it started at 2:33 a.m. my time. I'm just getting ready to go to bed. Some of you may have noticed that things got a little hot yesterday, but it's not a big deal. It's just, differing opinion. But after the show, a lot of you folks that are, uh, how do I say this? A lot of you folks that are frequent to my server that doesn't actually want to be on the show jump into the show channels after I log out. So we have like a discussion off camera. Well, that bled into about 2 a.m. yesterday. So I didn't go to bed till late. But as soon as I started to fall asleep, my phone started reminding me, hey, uh, it's already in the morning in the Ukraine and I've got stories for you. So my phone started banging into me and reminding me of that. Oh, okay. So Fine Ape says, hopefully times will allow us to return to the long dark. Yes, sir. I will do that. I've been contemplating that lately. That will come back, absolutely. And Luna Nights, I'm not so sure. Wife Quest, I sort of did that front to back already. I didn't intend to beat that game on camera, so that way it'll motivate people to go play it or get it. However, I do have something else that I will bring to the channel that I'm really, really into. I mean, it's literally The Walking Dead, the video game. It's called State of Decay 2, Juggernaut Edition. And unfortunately, because I've dedicated myself to doing these every day, I can only play it once a week. So tomorrow's the day I get to indulge. So I will ask that you sit tight and just bear with me because I can't wait to show that off on the channel. But yeah, I love that game. It's literally H1Z1 or The Walking Dead, uh, the game. It's fantastic. I love it. Anyway, my first story for you today was 2:33 a.m. my time, which would have been 10:33 a.m. Ukrainian time. So the military is already in full effect. And the story starts off with Russian troops have struck the western Ukrainian cities of Ivano-Frankivsk and Lutsk. These are two western towns. Like, if you're looking at the splash screen, it's somewhere in the box that says March 10th. It's that far over. And this is kind of disturbing because it almost feels a little bit like an I told you so. Like, I had a feeling that this was going to happen. So this is what this was is these were unusual attacks in the far west, and it indicates a new strategy for Russia, according to the local authorities. The attacks were near the air bases and airports in the far western region of the country. They say, thankfully, no casualties were reported. So, what had happened here is they're stopping every single chance and they're bombing every airfield in the West today to prevent any transfer of the 28 Polish MiG 29s that Poland is willing to give to the Ukraine. And when you hear 28 MiG 29s, if you're from the United States, you're thinking, well, that's nothing. An aircraft carrier carries 3 times that, right? But when you start thinking about European regional countries, this is going to become a factor. And later on in today's show, I will definitely discuss this with you all. This is substantial. And when you figure out how many aircraft the Ukrainian Air Force have currently, and you realize how they've been denied this, it may piss you off. I know it upsets me. Ooh, 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 ooh. So, looking at the chat just for fun, apparently there's a love triangle in the making here. Hey, hey, hey. So, I guess if the thing that Gunpowder Beauty says in the chat happens, then we're gonna have a duel, and I've got an anaconda. So I don't think a Hatfield's gonna be able to stand up to one of these. Anyway, sorry, I'm just goofing off a bit. It's Friday. Anyway, yeah, the far west air bases have been attacked, bombed, and I won't say destroyed, but they've been harassed to the point where I think we're getting the point that the Russians are saying you're not landing anything here that are gifts, which may make it a problem if we start bearing gifts to the Ukrainians. About 2 minutes later, there was an announcement that was actually stickied in like the American press, the AFP, sorry, Armed Forces Press, and it was building off of yesterday's story. The World Health Organization told Ukraine to safely destroy any potentially dangerous pathogens held in research laboratories before and during Russia's invasion to prevent possible spills and the spread of a disease, according to the report. The WHO has strongly recommended the Ministry of Health in Ukraine and other responsible bodies to destroy all high threat pathogens to prevent any potential spills. Now, this is all like diplomatic speak, but yesterday's stories were about how the Russians were preemptively accusing the Ukrainians and the United States for developing biological weapons in the Ukraine. Now, to be perfectly honest, that's all bullshit. Like, none of that's true. Anybody with a TV and any knowledge of geopolitics knows that we've been doing that with the Chinese in Wuhan with Anthony Fauci, who has suddenly disappeared off the news. Clearly, because he's been discredited and ashamed and kicked off the stage, essentially, right? So, all that was obviously bullshit. Anyway, the WHO didn't say if the Ukraine actually destroyed the pathogens or if the recommendation was made in relation to the war. The agency said that it has advised Ukraine on pathogen safety for years and it encourages the safe and secure disposal of any pathogens for every country. The report comes as Russia has made meritless claims that the U.S. is conducting biological weapons research in biolabs in the Ukraine. Both the US and the Ukraine clearly deny the claims, calling them gaslighting. That was one of the last things we talked about in yesterday's show. Don't tempt me. I know where there's 6 of those, Ellis. 6 fully operational of those. But I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I can't fly 6 of those, so I'll have to ask you and 4 of your friends to come help me, and we will deliver those to the Ukraine. And then we'll just work, together. Bird, and, all that good stuff. All right, so let's move on. 3:36 a.m. So it's now 11:36. It's almost lunchtime in the Ukraine already. Look how far we've gotten in only 3 stories. And I have a picture for you to share. And I'm sorry if this makes you feel nauseous or want to vomit. Don't worry. I'll take your hand. We'll get through this together. Ooh, that's not the right picture, is it? Let me fix this real quick. Sorry, I knew I messed that up. I had one picture that was screwed up. All right, there you go. That's correct, right there. So, I captioned this, the I don't know what I'm doing tour continues. And this reads, Vice President, and I'm going to be nice, I'm not going to call her by her nickname. Vice President Kamala Harris. What did you call her?
Vice President Kneepad?
Okay, I'm just saying I didn't do it this time. You did it. Vice President Kamala Harris and Romania's president will meet Friday today to discuss growing concerns about the influx of displaced people fleeing Ukraine for Romania and elsewhere in Eastern Europe due to Russia's invasion. It's a problem that it's a problem that the Biden administration officials and European leaders warn will likely get more complicated in the days and weeks ahead. Harris's talks in Bucharest with President Klaus Iohannis came after she spent Thursday in Poland, which she had already welcomed some 1.5 million Ukrainians since the invasion began. She met in Warsaw with Polish President Andrzej Duda and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, Ukrainian refugees, and others in hopes of getting a fuller picture of the unfolding humanitarian crisis. Now, I captioned this picture, I named it, "I don't know what I'm doing." Because she doesn't. And if you saw her interviews and her press conferences, she really doesn't have a clue. And it's not her. I hate to admit this. What happened this week with her in Europe was technically not her fault. And I know that it's really hard for me to say that, but I will be fair and impartial. What's going on with her right now is completely out of her control. She was supposed to go there this week on a victory tour of diplomatic accomplishment. You know, hey, look, we helped facilitate this deal with the Polish, and we got these MiGs, and we gave them to the Ukrainians. Aren't we great? Aren't we Americans fantastic? All that was supposed to happen until the DoD slammed the door shut, saying, "Nope, not gonna happen." And then she still had to go anyway because she was already penciled in her schedule. And everything she did so far on her tour is worthless. She's literally just going there spitting out platitudes, which you'll see in a future story here that I'll present to you later. Let's move on. Okay, so 3:38. Now it is now 9:38 Greenwich Meridian time. For those of you who know your geology, that would mean, or geography, I'm sorry, your geography, you would know that I'm about to talk about England. And this photo is called My Hands Are Tied. And if you don't know who that is Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He is the Winston Churchill of our time in every conceivable way. He's half American and half British. He is the Prime Minister of Britain. He is currently in conflict with the geopolitics of the day. He rubs off like a lovable idiot, but he's a highly intelligent person and should be respected as such. Anyway, sorry. At 9:38 p.m. a.m. this morning in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that it has been absolutely agonizing to refuse Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's request for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Both the UK and the US have nixed the idea over fears that it would lead to an escalation and potentially pull countries into the war. We have had some very frank conversations, and ones which have been deeply upsetting because there is a line beyond which, quite frankly, the UK and NATO would be deemed in direct conflict with Russia. This is all corpo speak. This is all political speak. Okay? All they're saying is, we feel really bad, but if we get involved on a formal level, we're now involved in a world war. Everyone is involved. Nobody wants to admit it. And everybody keeps thinking that if they keep saying this, that they're not involved. That's all it is. Ellis says, can we stop in the Czech Republic because he wants to pick up a few things? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. If you're willing to make the trip with me and deliver 6 A-10 Thunderbolt 2s, we can stop anywhere you want. As long as we can stop and pick up a beer in every country on the way.
Well, the
Cool?
Czech Republic does make some good beer.
I'm going to destroy Belgium. And then once we get to Ukraine, then I'll just go straight to that border check post and be like, yo, bro, give me that DP-28 you're holding.
And there also happen to be some very, very
Here's a
attractive women
PKM.
in the Czech
I took it
Republic.
off the tank I just stole. Anyway, let's move on. He said it was absolutely agonizing, and that we've had all these, conversations with Russia and everything. He's corpo speaking, right? It's agonizing, absolutely agonizing. I've had this conversation with at least a couple of times with Vladimir, but I think the difficulty is that it will require me to order RAF jets, hey, UK pilots, into the air with a mission to shoot down Russian fast jets. Yes, sir, thank you for saying the quiet part out loud. Because if you take that initiative, I'm pretty sure America will follow you. Right now, we're in this holding pattern because we're trying to force the hand of the EU to take the first step. We're okay with the idea of leading from behind this time because it's on their side of the world and it's their conflict, and we're trying desperately not to stick our nose into their business as the forerunner of agitation. Like, I had to think about this long and hard, especially after yesterday's episode. I understand what we're trying to do, but you got to get to the point where it's like, you know what? We got to be in this because we're already in this, right? But I like the idea of Boris Johnson putting it out there. So Gunpowder Beauty says Tardot is in it too when we leave. Okay, fair enough. If we leave and we don't have enough A10s, he can have mine because I am perfectly happy with flying an AC-130 Spooky. No problem. Put me in a 4-engine heavy and I got you covered. So, cool. Let's do it. Y'all can bird, and I'll just have my guy sitting there with the howitzer on the side of the plane going boom, boom, boom.
Oh
Anyway,
no, the Spookies have miniguns too.
I know, but I also got a howitzer. What is
Yeah,
it?
so it's more like boom.
Yeah, I got a 105. I got a 40 millimeter Bofors, and then I've got the minigun. So yeah, well, I'm just gonna be flying, but whatever. I'll just be doing big circles and sipping on Johnny Walker Blue Label at what 10,000 feet. All right, let's move on. That's Boris Johnson, by the way. Put your hands together for Boris Johnson. Sorry. All right, so now it's 3:39 a.m. and I'm still desperately trying to get some sleep. And it's 11:39 UK time, and I've got the latest Fuji tweet for you. Uh, Now the statistics are at least 2.5 million Ukrainian citizens have fled the country since Russia invaded last month as of Friday. This is Filippo Grandi. He is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So his job is to keep an eye on. He's doing head counts, right? People walk by, he just clicks a little thing on his little, in his hand. Click, 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 just like when you walk into a sports event. That number includes more than 1 million children. Now, there is one person in the audience right now who can absolutely relate to that because she just had a new one. 1 million children. Grandi said the organization also estimates that about 2 million people have been displaced within Ukraine. Millions have been forced to leave their homes by this senseless war. Fair enough. Oh, look, he actually put that in the tweet. Sorry, I paraphrased it and it was actually word for word. My mistake. So, let's move on. 2.5 million people in 16 days. I think this has surpassed the mass exodus of refugees in this volume, in this short amount of time. It has exceeded World War II.
No.
That's to give you an idea of the scale of this disaster that's unfolding in front of everybody. 2.5 million people in 16 days. That's amazing. Like it's not amazing in the sense that you're supposed to be impressed. It's amazing in the sense that you should be shocked and appalled that this many people have been displaced. I mean, it's like what? Maybe taking the entire population of Kansas City and shoving them out? Something like that, right? About 2.5 million people? I could be wrong. I usually am. Apparently, I don't know shit about war either. You bet you were waiting for me to say that. Moving on. Let's see. Okay, so next is the day 16 damage statistics. Okay, so it's now 1:14 p.m. Ukraine local time, and this report was put out that the Russian military has caused an estimated $119 billion in damage in Ukraine. Okay, think of like a Category 5 hurricane, and I'm going to try to put this in a place where most of you guys are, so, or at least that you can understand. Think of a Category 5 hurricane barreling into Charleston, South Carolina. So that's a typical spot where a hurricane would hit, if it didn't scoop underneath Florida. It would go up the Appalachian coast, right? So imagine a Category 5 hurricane hitting Charleston, South Carolina, and wiping out everything within a 400-mile radius of that. $119 billion in damage. That came from the country's first deputy economy minister, Denis Kudin. Refugees fleeing Ukraine have reached 2.5 million, and another 2 million people have been displaced within the country. That was according to the United Nations. In the besieged city of Mariupol, residents have had no water, heat, or electricity for over a week. Marina Levenchuk, who fled the city, told the New York Times residents have been forced to melt snow for drinking water. That's what's going on in Mariupol right now. They're just bodies lying in the streets. It's gross. Now, the whole melting snow or whatever, like I've done that before. It's a pain in the ass, but it's not hard to do. Like you scoop up a bunch, you put it in a cauldron, you boil it, you build like a distillery, it evaporates and it drips down into another jar, off you go. But still, that's what they've been reduced to. Now, I did it as an exercise. They're doing it as a necessity. It's been snowing. It's still winter in Ukraine. Like, they got quite a bit of it today, actually. Moving right along. It's now 6:42, and daylight is creeping into my bedroom window, which means I've got 9 dogs that are awake. And it sounds like a fox hunt's about to begin. And that usually pisses me off. It's 2:42 p.m. Ukraine. So this is that lull in the day after everyone's had lunch in the corporate world and nobody really wants to work and everyone's just waiting for 5 o'clock to roll around. That kind of time of day. Well, if you're at war, it's a little different. And oh, okay. So I'm referring to the picture that you're seeing on the screen right now. So I don't have a new picture for you. This is the battle map as of today or yesterday. And it says Russian forces are continuing their offensive towards Kyiv on Friday, trying to break through Ukrainian defenses in Kukari, which is 56 miles to its northwest, and Demidov, which is 25 miles north. And the General Staff of the Ukraine's armed forces had disclosed. So everything north where it says Kyiv, sort of the northwest and directly north, that's where all the convoys were. This is where all the amassed forces are starting to organize. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk also said that buses would be sent Friday to multiple Kyiv suburbs to bring people to the capital and to bring aid to those staying behind. Vereshchuk added that Ukrainian authorities are trying yet again Friday to send aid to the eastern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, all the way over on the right on that map. The site of a maternity and children's hospital bombing Wednesday, and bring evacuees out to the city of Zaporizhzhia. Repeated previous attempts have failed, and aid and rescue convoys were targeted by Russian shelling. So, in short, and this might upset you, Gunpowder Beauty, but yesterday a maternity hospital was attacked with bombs and missiles. One bomb was so big that it left a crater 30 feet wide and 20 feet deep. It completely collapsed the center building, and strangely enough, I mean, it's an active hospital. The casualty report was 3 adults died and a 6-year-old girl died. She was actually buried in the rubble. Original reports were that because it was a maternity ward, they thought that there was an infant from the ICU in the rubble, but it actually turned out to be a 6-year-old girl, which doesn't make it any less atrocious. But that was recorded by, I think it was NATO originally. They recorded that that was the 18th hospital deliberately attacked by the Russians. You're going to find out here shortly that that number is grossly misrepresentedly short. Don't worry, we'll get there. All right, so moving along, 7:05 a.m. So this is the time where my alarm goes off, but I haven't been to sleep yet. So I'm extra spicy right now, like super salty. It's 3:05 p.m. in Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that his country should help bring people into that his country would help bring people into the Ukraine that the Kremlin claims are willing to fight for his eastern separatist regions. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu claimed during a Security Council meeting in Moscow that Russia has received more than 16,000 applications from Middle Easterners, a group he said, quote, helped in the fight against ISIS. That means he's just conscripted 16,000 Syrians. So if you see that there are people who want to come, especially on a voluntarily basis, especially not motivated by money, ready to come and help people living in the Donbass, yeah. Well, we should meet them halfway and help them get to the combat zone, Putin said. Shoigu said also that he thinks Russian fighters in Donbass need more anti-aircraft and other sophisticated weapons, and that they should be allowed to use the large quantity of, quote, trophy weapons taken off of Ukrainian soldiers, including Javelin anti-tank missiles. You see, this is the exact thing that we need to address. If you employ and distribute soldiers, even volunteers from another country, we will consider this an escalation of war. It's time to put that dipshit in Moscow on the defensive for once, diplomatically. Now think about that. This week, we have been told by Vladimir Putin on several different subjects. If you do this, you are escalating the war. If you do that, you are escalating the war. If you help the Ukrainians, you are escalating the war. Every day it was something new. And the reason that he got away with it is because this administration, with this dopey-headed retard of a president, continually telegraphed what they will not tolerate, which gave Putin the line that he knew he could get right up to without crossing. So every day he said what he won't tolerate. And in the meantime, we have cushed every time he's made these declarations. If you do this, you're going to war. If you're doing that, you're going to war. If you try to help bring planes into the Ukraine from Poland, you're going to war. If you levy sanctions on Russia, you're declaring war. Like, none of this should sound new to you. So the fact that he just conscripted 16,000 Syrians to help him fight in Ukraine, you would think that we would say, yo, that's an escalation of war. But we don't have anybody in Washington willing to have the balls to say that. So he'll get away with it. And the reason he got them so easily is because he helped Bashar al-Assad and used, surprise, surprise, chemical and biological weapons in Aleppo to reach that expedient outcome. And then Assad basically owed Putin. Putin's like, yo, I just dealt you a solid. One day I'm going to need you. When I ask for you, you better be there. And Assad was like, whatever, my problem solved. Call me whenever. Well, guess what? He called him today. 16,000 Syrian troops are headed to the Ukraine. So it's cool for Russia to have soldiers from soldiers from Syria and Belarus and Chechnya and his neo-Nazi group, the Wagner Group, that we talked about yesterday. So technically, he has 4 countries worth of psychos. But if any country helps Ukraine, that's an escalation of war. Right. Right. And we keep letting him get away with it. Moving right along. It is now 8:12 a.m. I just turned off the last snooze alarm on my clock. It's now 4:12 p.m. in the Ukraine. And the United Nations Human Rights Office said Friday that it has received credible reports of several cases of Russian forces using cluster munitions, including in populated areas. Now, Scott, we know this
Yeah.
already, right?
Yeah, we talked about that like about a week ago.
We talked about that on like day 3. We had pictures, and we showed you all pictures of the canisters of cluster munitions because the tail drops off of them before the weapon is deployed as it's landing, as it's coming down, right? We've showed you all these. Apparently, the United Nations finally found out. Due to their wide area effects, the use of cluster munitions in populated areas is incompatible with the international humanitarian law principles governing the conduct of hostilities. We have so far recorded 549 civilian deaths and 957 injuries since the armed attack began on 24th of February. Although the actual figure is probably much higher. NATO announced last week that it has also seen the use of cluster bombs being deployed in Ukraine. So what they're doing right here is they're covering their ass. They're saying, wait a minute, here's the numbers we have. We know it's probably much worse. The reason we know it's much worse is because of hygiene. People have been burying the dead in mass graves quickly to get them underground before disease sets in because they don't have the time to do individual services. There are videos everywhere. If you look up mass graves in Mariupol, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. You better have a strong stomach and an iron heart because it will piss you off. But remember, I don't know shit about war. Let's move on. Two minutes later, it is 4:14 p.m. in Moscow. I left a note here to expand on the theory that Putin is being lied to on his daily briefings. Now, some of you guys in the chat have mentioned this. I think Squib mentioned this. I think some of my panel has mentioned this. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that progress is being made in talks with Ukraine, but declined to elaborate. There are certain positive shifts, negotiators on our side tell me. I will talk about all of this later. Putin made the comments after a meeting in Moscow Friday with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, where he insisted that mounting economic sanctions against Russia would not limit its development. So, we've been doing this 16 days. You've probably heard me say this several times. Sanctions don't stop bullets. Sanctions don't stop the bombs from falling. Right now, none of this is having any immediate effect on the battlefield in Ukraine. The only thing these sanctions are doing is hurting oligarchs, and it's hurting the citizens and the people of of Russia who aren't even supporting this war in Ukraine. They can't use their credit cards. They can't buy certain things anymore. I think the ruble now is 200 ruble to a dollar, which means it's only 1 ruble is less than half a cent. I think what we do with sanctions is honestly try to force governments in, or, sorry, we start to force the populations of these countries we put these sanctions on into being so pissed off that they start a coup because they're the end user. They're the ones that are the most affected by this. Sure, we knock out a couple of oligarchs. Yeah, we illegally seize their $500 billion super yachts. And we kick them out of New York City posh apartments or whatever. But at the end of the day, those guys can weather that storm. It's the everyday Russian who can't go to McDonald's now because it's closed, who can't have their Starbucks coffee in the morning because it's closed, who can't pay for their gas with their credit card now because they're shut off. Those are the ones that are suffering the most. Putin doesn't give a shit. His army doesn't give a shit. It's the people. And unfortunately, those people, they're disarmed. They don't have a Second Amendment in Russia, do they? There are exceptions for farmers, for shotguns, but by and large, most of Russia is disarmed. And now, some of you will start to draw the parallel between the importance of having your freedom and your Second Amendment rights in the event that your government is totalitarian, i.e., what we're dealing with right now. Hmm. Anyway, that segment was sponsored in part by Reynolds Wrap, by the way, if you're into tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. But I just thought I'd put that out there, but yeah, I kind of believe in that a bit. They can't defend themselves, nor can they revolt, because they're all disarmed. We here in America, in most states, we're not disarmed. And yet, we squander the opportunity to overthrow. Kind of weird. Just a thought. Let's move on. We're almost halfway through already, so I promised you I won't hold you too late. It's 420, man. It's 420 in Ukraine. And what one says is going well, so will the other. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that his country's military has reached, quote, a strategic turning point in its fight against invading Russian forces. It's impossible to say how many days we will still need to free our land, but it's possible to say that we will do it because, well, we've reached a strategic turning point, he says. Didn't elaborate, though. Zelensky spoke in a video showing him outside of the presidential administration building in Kyiv. This is something he's been doing every day, by the way. He does a daily briefing, usually at, around, or slightly after the curfew kicks in. That way he gets maximum exposure. Let's see. He also announced that authorities are working on 12 humanitarian corridors and trying to ensure that needy people receive food, medicine, and basic goods. Zelensky's comments come as Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that there have also been, quote, certain positive shifts in talks with the Ukraine. Now, that from Putin, I ain't buying it for one bit. His own generals lie to him to keep him thinking that everything's going well. He doesn't realize how many personnel he has lost. If you look at the scroller, it's supposedly over 12,000. While that seems like a high number, you have to bear in mind, especially if you saw the video yesterday of the tank column getting destroyed. The Ukrainians are incredibly resilient people, and they understand how to make the best use of what they were given. A tank column was working its way into Kyiv. I think it was about 8 to 10 vehicles. Tanks, APCs, right? One javelin hits the front tank, and almost immediately after, another one hits the back one. Now you've got a kill box. And for the next 30 seconds, every vehicle in between gets liquidated. Now you figure a tank, if it's like I'm going to go old school. If it's a T-54 or a T-62 or a T-62A, that's a 5-man crew. If it's a T-72 or a T-90, which is an upgraded T-72, or a T-92, I think that's a 4-man crew. So each tank that got knocked out, let's go with the low numbers. Each tank got knocked out, front and back. That's 8 guys, gone. An APC, a Russian APC, on average, it can hold 12 personnel or 10 fully kitted out ones. Full battle rattle. Plus the driver, plus the radio man. So let's go 10 with the 2 guys inside up front. Each one of those that got knocked out was 12 dudes. This is not the first day we've knocked out APCs. You just saw the scroller show you how many APCs got wiped out. So let's say 12 per APC. That number of 12,000 troops, that doesn't seem so high anymore, does it? You knock out a MiG, okay, that's 1. But you knock out an APC, that's 12 men gone. What about the Russian destroyer? The one on Snake Island? The one that the Snake Island, was it 12 guys? They basically told the Russian ship to fuck off. They didn't die. You know what did die? That ship. Do you think everyone got off of it in time? I don't think so.
Not even
Figure a
close.
destroyer at least hosts a crew of 500. Let's say 20% casualty. That's 100 soldiers. Gone. In one shot. Gone. They deserved it too. Them fuckers, they deserved it. They took an Estonian civilian cargo ship, threatened to sink them, and said, you go take your ship to that port over there in a straight line. You go straight ahead. And the guy's like, why should I do that? Because we think there's mines there. Now go, or we'll just turn your whole ship into driftwood. Captain says, fuck it. Goes. Hits a mine. One of his sailors dies. Ship sinks. Those guys deserved it. The whole Navy, the whole Russian Navy near the Crimea, they all deserve it. That's a war crime. They sent a non-belligerent nation's civilian ship into a minefield and let them die. War crime. Let's move on. About 20 minutes or so later, not really 20 minutes, 18 minutes, it's 4:38 p.m. in Romania. And I have a picture here I called Windbag. I'm going to guess which one of those two I'm referring to. So, this story is captioned, "The Captain Obvious Hot Air Tour continues into Romania." Vice President Kamala Harris, see I said her name properly, speaking Friday in Romania with its president Klaus Ioannis, said that the world is seeing the Russian playbook unfold in Ukraine. It includes lies, misinformation, and acts of aggression that we are now witnessing. We maintain that diplomacy is the way to resolve these issues that coexist with our wah 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 wah. Right? Is that what you're hearing? Because that's what I'm hearing. If you want to know the actual words, we maintain the diplomacy is the way to resolve these issues that coexist with our commitment to ensure that our allies are strong and that there must be serious consequences and accountability for what Russia is doing. That was the full line. I was hearing like elevator music. During the Q&A session, she responded to a question about Russian attacks on civilians in Ukraine, saying, "We are clear that any intentional attack or targeting of civilians is a war crime. Period." Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. Get her the fuck off my screen.
Fortunately, you can.
Yes, I have that power. Okay, so I promise you this wasn't coincidence. It is 9:11 a.m. my time. And there was an interview with a man named Dan Hoffman, and this is what he looks like. The guy on the left is Bill Hemmer. Former senior officer with the CIA and a 3-time station chief and senior executive clandestine services officer tried to decipher the question asked by Tom Cotton yesterday. Now, if you were here for yesterday's show, I played you about a 10-minute clip of Tom Cotton categorically destroying the Senate Intelligence Committee and the acting general about escalation and how a MiG is more escalatory than a javelin or a stinger, because the guy that's in a flaming wreck of an aircraft before he hits the ground and meets his fate, he doesn't know the difference. He just knows that he's about to die, right? That's aggression. Anyway, Dan Hoffman tried to decipher how planes are any more escalatory than stingers and javelins. And his answer was pretty good. And it's a catchphrase now. He says that what happened yesterday and the decisions of yesterday are a decision without distinction. And he's absolutely right. You can try to reason out how a stinger or a javelin is less escalatory than a jet, but you're never going to convince me. Ever. Because if you provide a weapon that turns a jet into a flaming wreck and the man inside it, or a javelin that actually knocks out a tank and eradicates the 5 men inside it, that's just as escalatory as if I was in a plane and shot down your plane that was about to hit a maternity hospital yesterday. Okay? You're not going to convince me otherwise. But then again, I don't know shit about war. So, whatever, right? Anyway, I see Night Strike has finally made it to the chat. And I guess he wasn't here for the intro where I got to pretty much rag on him for hiding earlier because he didn't want to come and present stories today, which is why I'm having to do it the same way I always do. Anyway, I'm sure he's going to type in the chat, "I was busy, I had to do this." Anyway, let's move on. We're actually past the halfway point, so I will spare you a 2-hour show today.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. 6:38 p.m. Ukrainian time. I have a tweet for you. Here you go. He did it in English, just for your viewing pleasure. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that he has had a substantive conversation with President Biden where he informed him about the crimes of Russia against the civilian population. Right. We also agreed on further steps to support the defense of Ukraine and increase sanctions against Russia. Man, you were hiding, dude. Anyway. Well, thank you, Al. I see that you agree with me. Anyway, so yeah, basically him and Biden talked today about what had gone on the day before and how aggression is aggression, and I think he's starting to see the wood for the trees, and he's starting to understand that there is only certain things we can do without sticking our nose fully into this business, even though we're already involved. We're literally splitting hairs on what we consider as aggression. But what's unfortunate is the enemy he's laying out what he considers aggression, and it changes every day. It's almost like Putin is the ATF, and everything he says is a reinterpretation of bump stocks or trigger cranks or binary triggers or rare breed force reset triggers. He's being that level of bitch. He really is. The only difference is when the AFT, yes, I did that deliberately, when the AFT reinterprets something, we stand up and smack him across the mouth and say, you don't have the authority, number one, and number two, we're not going to let you get away with it. Whereas in Russia versus the United States, he gets away with it every time he wants. Every single time he says that he's not going to tolerate something, our administration stands down. So, of course, we look like a bitch to him because he gets away with it daily until proven otherwise. And that's a dangerous thing against a leader who only responds to uh, de escalation through the threat of escalation because that's what he does. And apparently, he's the master of it, and our guy is an idiot because he keeps falling for it. But let's move on because I don't know shit about war. All right, so 7:39. So we're well into the curfew hours of Ukrainians' curfew, and this one was weird. And I think Scott, I think you brought this to my attention. But here's a picture, which honestly, that's the best picture I could find. And to be perfectly honest, that's every construction site in the city of Houston, incomplete road project. Anyway, it says a drone that flew over several NATO countries all the way from the Ukrainian war crashed overnight on the outskirts of the Croatian capital of Zagreb, triggering a loud blast and damaging parked cars but causing no injuries. A NATO official speaking on the condition of anonymity said that the alliance's, quote, integrated air and missile defense tracked the flight path of an object which subsequently crashed in Zagreb. Earlier, Croatian President Zoran Milanovic said it is clear that it came from Ukraine. Huh. A statement issued by Croatia's government said that the, quote, pilotless military aircraft entered Croatian airspace from neighboring Hungary at a speed of 430 miles an hour, which is about the speed of a diving P-47 Thunderbolt. Sorry, I just know these stupid statistics. And at an altitude of 4,300 feet. According to the information I have so far, this flying object was Russian manufactured, but we are not sure whether it belongs to the Russian or Ukrainian army. This came from the Croatian Prime Minister, Andrej Pwnery. So he's right. He's actually right. Half the stuff that's in Ukrainian inventory is manufactured in Russia. So it's really hard to say who did what. It's almost like the story I gave you yesterday and days earlier about the evacuation corridors being mined. And the question I had posed to you all was, did the attackers mine it after the defenders had dug in? Or did the defenders mine it before the attackers even got on scene? Because the mines are both from the same country, ultimately. And the evacuees might have found them haphazardly. Because you have to remember, a landmine has no loyalty. And a landmine has no friend or foe designator. It's just going to kill whatever steps on it. So I do pose that question to you. That whole story about mining the evacuation corridors, I'm not saying it's beyond Russians doing Russian things, but I think it's also fair to say you knew they were coming. You probably set up some defenses. You might have been more proactive in warning your evacuees, yo, don't go down that road. We set up some surprises for the Russians there. Take this one instead. Communications breakdown is what that is. Let's see, where did I leave off? Military experts of the War Zone online magazine said that the aircraft is likely a Soviet era Tu-141 Strisht. Strisht? Strisht. Sorry, my Russian is rusty. Reconnaissance drone that must have been that must have severely malfunctioned. It is said that the Ukraine is the only known operator of the Tu-141, which has a wingspan of nearly 12 feet and weighs just over 6 tons, 12,000 pounds. Ukrainian Defense Military Advisor Markian Lubkiv... Oh, sorry. I'm trying to read the Cyrillic. Lubkivsky, there you go, was quoted by Interfax news agency as denying the drone that crashed in Croatia was Ukrainian. He blamed Russia, while the Russian embassy in Zagreb said that the drone was made in Ukraine and that the Russian forces stopped using T-141s since the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991. This is a bunch of finger pointing. If I'm a Ukrainian UAV operator, first of all, I'm not flying it west to Croatia. So that's already suspect. If it has GPS and autopilot and it was screwed up, maybe? But to say that the Russians don't have surplus in their inventory to try to set this up is naive. I mean, they've got
They're still using T-62s.
They got
That's like
T-54s.
that's a fucking Cold War era
They still use they got
shit.
T-54s, dude. But let's be fair. We did see a Ukrainian border check with a DP-28. Listen, man, I will give you modern weapons in my entire inventory. Give me your DP-28, please. Like, let me bring you up to the 21st century and give me your relic.
Trade him an AR-10.
Yeah, okay. I'll give him my 50 fucking Beowulf. I can always build another one of those. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so it's 11:40 my time at the shop. It is 7:40 p.m. Ukrainian time. So it's dusk. It's dusk. This is where before the infantry was more active, and then the air wing would take over. Nowadays, there's no distinction. They're getting bold. They're just doing whatever they want now. Russians doing Russian things. A senior U.S. defense official said Friday that Ukraine has 56 working fighter jets that are flying around 5 to 10 sorties a day inside the country. Russia has air defense systems that cover most of Ukraine, many of them based in Belarus and Russia. The official added that Poland's offer earlier this week to send a fleet of MiG-29 fighter jets into Ukraine isn't going to help the country, and the U.S. insisted that instead it is working to get more ground missiles and air defense systems in Ukraine, which officials assess would be much more useful. So, I had a question. Wouldn't adding 28 more MiG-29s from Poland increase their combat effectiveness by an additional 33%? It's simple math, right? You've got 56 planes running 10 sorties a day. So that plane is running day after day, hour after hour, 10 missions. Maybe not even the same pilot. Maybe the pilot lands, hops out, and another pilot jumps in like it's the Le Mans, right? That plane is going to wear out fast. Or, let's say you have 56 planes in the air all day. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're willing to wear down your planes. And you're a little thin in certain spots. Wouldn't having an additional 28 more fighters in the air make sense? Either in the sense that you have more planes so you can give the active ones a little bit of downtime to cool off and get maintenance done on them, at the least, right? Like, yo, Ivan, hop out of that one, cool it down. We got to work on that one. Here's a shiny new one from the polls. Go take that one. It's set up exactly the same way. Have a safe flight, right? That makes sense. But yet everyone's saying, no, 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 no. They don't need any extra planes. I beg to differ. In terms of hardware, yeah, it's nice to have a spare. In terms of personnel, these guys are burning the candle at both ends. They're tired. Like, these guys have been fighting non-stop for 16 days. When's the last time any of you have been up for 16 days? Hmm? The finest of apes says combat ability. Yes, combat effectiveness is a maybe. I would agree with you. Absolutely. If I had only 56 planes, but I had 200 pilots, and all the pilots are good pilots, then yeah, combat effectiveness would absolutely be better. But if I only have 56 planes and 56 pilots, then it's only a matter of giving the hardware a breather and, being able to cycle your inventory to do maintenance on the ones that have been worn as opposed to the ones that you've just got that might not be worn. Now, to be perfectly fair, there's been reports that now I'm going to try to relate this to something similar. I asked a lot of people about Polish AK-47s because currently our market here in the States has gotten an influx of them. And my question is, are they built to a good standard? The answer was yes. Are they maintained to a good standard? The answer again was yes. The Poles take care of their stuff. So when I heard a story today that some of the MiG-29s that were being offered were mothballed planes and that they needed maintenance done, I sort of side-eyed it. I was like, are you sure? The Poles are proud people. They take pride in what they do. They work hard, they keep their things in peak operating condition because they have a limited supply. You would think that they would keep their sword sharp. So I kind of looked at that with a bit of skepticism. But either way, the fact of the matter is the same. If you have 56 planes and you add another 28, you've just increased your combat ability, as Fine 8 pointed out. Now, if you have 200 qualified pilots and only 56 planes, now your combat effectiveness is increased too. But because I don't have those numbers, it's all speculation. I'll be fair. I still think because the president of the country asked for them, he must be privy to the information saying, I could really use the extra planes. And to ignore that request is kind of shitty. But it also can't be discounted that these people have been brilliant with their use of man-pads. There's no denying that. And we're still working on Patriot missiles and S-300s. So I am not ashamed to admit if I'm wrong, if doing what we're doing diplomatically now, in the sense of giving them more man-pads, Patriots, and S-300s, actually proves to be far superior. I will be the first to tell you, hey, I got it wrong. But when the president of that country asks for a certain thing, give it to him. And then see if he's wrong. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so now we're at 12:42 my time. It's 8:42 p.m. Ukrainian time. And I have a photo of Chernobyl again. More than 200 workers have been working at gunpoint since the Russian soldiers seized the Chernobyl nuclear power plant on February 24th. Overnight shift employees who were supposed to work for only 12 hours have been running operations at the plant for 2 straight weeks. Okay, now I asked you a long time ago, have you ever stayed up for 16 days? I've done that. It's pretty miserable. Now I'm going to ask you, have you ever been forced to be stuck at work for 2 weeks? You never got to leave work? We don't even know if they've eaten or slept. They're being held hostage. Anyway, among the nuclear engineers is Natalia Rumel's 63-year-old father. Basically, the power plant is held by people who have no clue about nuclear security protocols. This came from Rumel himself. He did an interview with a local news agency out of Munich, Germany. For more than 40 hours now, the power has been completely cut off from the plant, leaving the facilities on reserve diesel generators that only have a 48-hour capacity, according to the transmission system. After that, cooling systems of the storage facility for the spent nuclear fuel will stop, making radiation leaks an inevitability. Russian President Vladimir Putin's barbaric war puts the entirety of the region of Europe in danger. We've got to stop this immediately. This came from Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmitry Kuleba, calling on the international community to urgently demand Russia cease fire to allow repair units to restore power supply. Now, I wrote that part actually this evening when I got home from work. But I had heard a story from Scott saying that I think tankers were on the way to refuel the generators so a repair crew can come out there and fix the broken conduit. But I still haven't seen any story corroborating that that has been done. And if you take time into account, time's up. 2 days ago, they had 48 hours. Time's up now. So what's going on in Chernobyl? I guess we'll know by tomorrow. Moving on. Let me get rid of this. So it is now, let's see, 9:02 p.m. Ukrainian time. And this is the story that I was waiting for quite a while. Here's a picture for you. The WHO on Thursday verified, so this was yesterday, that Russian forces have actually attacked 26 hospitals and health centers in Ukraine since the invasion began. The 26 healthcare facilities include the Children's Hospital and Maternity Ward that the Russian forces attacked Wednesday in Mariupol, leaving 3 dead and 17 injured. In total, 12 people died and 34 have been injured. More incidents are being verified. WHO strongly condemns these attacks, obviously. An eastern Ukrainian official claimed Friday that a Russian missile has struck a care facility for disabled people. The official added that there were 330 people inside the building near Oskol at the time of the attack, and at least 63 of those people have been evacuated since. Luckily, there have been no victims. That is kind of a small miracle, actually. So the news agency quoted casualties in Ukraine. Make sure I got that right. The news agency quoted casualties in Ukraine since February 24th, including 564 civilians killed and 982 injured. Among the deceased are 41 children. Okay, emotional thing. Won't somebody please think of the children? Through Ukraine's Commissioner for Human Rights, Verkova Rada, said Thursday that 71 children have been killed and more than 100 have been injured. So originally, they had claimed that only 18 hospitals and healthcare facilities were attacked. There was one person on the ground who was an investigative journalist who actually said it was 28. That was from yesterday. The WHO has confirmed 26. So the guy that said 28 was probably accurate. And the WHO is slowly confirming these as they go down the list. Even though originally it was only 18. The UN said 18. The WHO said 26. A man on the ground, an investigative journalist who has no vested interest in any of this, actually said 28. Now, Russia keeps denying the fact that they're attacking hospitals. No, we didn't do that. No, it's not a military target. We don't do that. If it was one hospital with a dumbfire missile, accident. 2, shitty missile system. 28, uh, that's deliberate. I'm sorry. That's fucking deliberate. Even Putin yesterday said that the maternity hospital was a valid military target. You know why? His justification is probably, because they're breeding the future military that's going to try to stop me. What a dick. Moving right along. Okay, we're getting through this, guys. We're almost done. I promise. I'm going to show you a picture from a history lesson. Some of you are going to recognize this immediately. Some of you may not. I will clear the air for you. This picture is Stalingrad. The helmet should have been a dead giveaway. The destruction, however, doesn't look too different than what you've seen for the last 16 days now, is it? 10:04 p.m. Ukrainian time. This was 2:04 p.m. Central Time, which would have been 3:04 Eastern Time at the Pentagon. And I'm going to give this man the respect he deserves of his rank, even though I don't particularly like him. I respect the rank, even though I don't have to respect the man. Pentagon Press Secretary, retired Admiral John Kirby, said Friday that Russia has started to make ground in its attempts to advance on the capital city of Kyiv. There's Russian bombardment and shelling going on quite violently as we speak. And we do assess that the Russians are beginning to make more momentum on the ground towards Kyiv, particularly from the east. The news comes as defense officials have been sounding the alarm for weeks that Russian President Vladimir Putin will attempt to encircle the city to overthrow the democratically elected government and install his own puppet regime. So that's why I picked this picture. What the people of Kyiv, what the Klitschko brothers, 2 heavyweight boxing champion legends, one of which is the mayor of Kyiv, the capital, what they have decided is the industry and business is on the west side of the Dnieper River, and the government buildings are sort of straddling both sides of it. If it comes down to it, they will blow all the bridges along the Dnieper River. And then the Russians will be forced to do Russian things. In the sense of they will emulate what Nazi Germany did in Stalingrad. They will bombard the outer perimeter of the city and level it, raze it to the ground into rubble. Once they think that that's enough, they will attempt to cross the river and then attack the next ring of the onion until they make their way towards the center. This is exactly the playbook that the Germans used during the siege of Stalingrad as they tried to cross the Volga. That's why I picked this picture, because I've become a student of history. until they get to the center, they're just going to keep pounding the perimeter. And just how long this is going to take is unknown. What's the spirits that I'm enjoying tonight? Actually, I'm not. Um, Tonight was sushi night, so I just had a couple of Art Car IPAs because the place that I bought the sushi didn't have uh, Sapporo Golden Reserves. Sorry to disappoint you. I have a really bad allergy day today, and I'm actually there was something on a personal note that I didn't bring up today. Maybe I'll tell you guys at the end of the show. But if you're around that long, I'll explain it to you because I think you deserve to hear it. Because obviously I sound a little weird. Anyway, um, I truly believe that what the Russians are doing right now is they're playing out of a 1943 playbook. They're really trying to lay siege to Stalingrad, which was their own city. And had they been a proper student of history, then they will realize that they won't know how long this is going to take, and they obviously forgot that the defenders won because the Germans never took Stalingrad. They beat it to death, but they never took it. The Russians just kept fighting back and holding and holding and holding until the Germans just couldn't stomach it anymore. So maybe they thought they would do it differently. It's kind of liberal thinking, isn't it? Oh no, they did it wrong. We'll get it right this time. Mm-hmm. Well, good luck with that. Let's fast forward an hour, and it is now 4:05 Eastern Time in D.C. again. And the State Department put out a statement, and it said, U.S. citizens should not travel to the Ukraine. This came from State Department spokesman Ned Price. Those in Ukraine should depart immediately, if it's safe for them to do so, using commercial or other privately available options. U.S. citizens who travel to Ukraine, especially with the purpose of participating in fighting there, they face significant risks, including the very real risk of capture or death. You don't say. Okay, sidebar. Fine 8. I don't know if I would call it burning soap. I will tell you that when I first drank IPAs, I thought they tasted disgusting. I thought they were pine cones in a can. I'll give you that. And for some stupid reason, I kept trying them, different ones, to try to figure out what the fuss was all about. I was like, I don't like these. I'm a Belgian quad ale drinker. I drink Golden Drac. I drink Pirat. I drink Saint Bernardus ABT 12. I drink the type of quad ales that you have to chew before you can swallow them. And yes, I will enjoy an imperial stout. So I'm right along there with you. I like dark beer. I just kept trying to find out what the fuss was about IPAs. Why do metrosexual people with sculpted beards and manicured nails, why do they think this is so awesome? Every time I crack one open, I'm like, it tastes like a pine cone. But after I tried about 10 or 15 different brands of these, I think I figured it out. They don't taste the greatest, but boy, do they have an effect. They hit you hard. The first time I sat down to a beer called Dogfish Head Ale 120-minute IPA, it came in a very limited edition batch. It smelled like Fruit Loop cereal, and it was a 26% ABV. I drank 2 of those. I was good for the rest of the day. I was like, I'm good. I'm just going to lay down here for a while. So like, yeah, I don't like the way they taste. I give you that. But they work. And for a little while, they never gave me a headache. So I was like, well, that's cool. I get to have all the fun without the penalty. That's the only reason I drink a couple of these. I also jokingly, like some of my local friends, or if you're in the server and you talk to Scott, he'll tell you, uh, St. Arnold's Art Car IPA or their double IPA called Double Down. I call it my Jekyll juice because if I'm in the wrong company, I turn into a real prick. So yeah, it does things to me, weird things. Wait, I should do that in Trump's voice. It does things to me, really weird things, really strange things, great things, wonderful things. Anyway, let's get to the rest of the stories. Sidebar over. Okay, so yeah, the State Department states the obvious: don't go to Ukraine, and if you go, we can't protect you because you might get captured and you might die. Hmm. Okay. Remember that story about the Canadian sniper? Do you think he gave a shit? Nah. Matter of fact, he's gonna go drink his last can of Hefeweizen. Sorry, I'm not even gonna try to guess the name of it. I've got all these whale tail glasses that would blow your mind. But yeah, I enjoy a few of those from time to time too. All right, let's move on. No, none of that surprises me. All right, so moving right along. 5:07 p.m. my time, Central Standard Time. So this was just as I left work. And I want to say that this was a post facto story because I remember seeing this interview while I was at work. Out of all the generals that have been interviewed that are retired, I tend to listen to two, Jack Keane and Keith Kellogg, because they tell you like it is. They don't have time for bullshit. Well, anyway, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg was interviewed today, and he says Russian President Vladimir Putin will be considered a war criminal for his actions during the invasion of Ukraine. I would agree with that. Yes, old Soviet tactics of mass artillery. Kyiv is a 2,000-year-old city with a population of over 1.5 million. It used to be 3 million, and you saw the scenes earlier. Scenes like this are horrific because the artillery he's going to have to bring to bear will be massive. You will see a lot of civilians dying, that is. He's now reaching a point of truly being a war criminal. These are things we do not tolerate in society. We shouldn't anymore. And you are going to see it with television and the internet and social media. You see, all those things made the world smaller. If you think about the last 100 years, think about what the world was like in 1922. Think about Charles Lindbergh crossing the Atlantic. Think about the end of World War I. We are now past World War I. This is after the sinking of the Lusitania, which forced Woodrow Wilson to finally stop being the Lord of War and arms dealer and actually sending troops to put boots to ass to the Kaiser, right? Then came Prohibition. Then came the Great Depression. The world was still huge. The only way to cross the ocean back then was steamer ship. There still wasn't transatlantic aircraft yet. Even though Lindbergh did it in the spirit of St. Louis, that's not a mass transit, right? Then came, let's see, we had the Roaring Twenties with Prohibition, and then we ended up in the Dust Bowl and the Depressed 30s, which is where my dad came along because he was born in 35. Towards the end of the Depression, we started to pay attention to what was going on in the world around us. The Japanese was advancing on Southeast Asia. We thought that was wrong, so we cut off their oil supplies because that's how they continued to push their war machine back then, because we fueled it. So because they couldn't get their oil from us, they thought, well, we're the enemy now. And they have to get the oil through Southeast Asia means. And the only way to do that was to take it. And if they took it, then we would take offense to that. And then we would probably start hostilities. So what did they do? They hit us in a sneak attack, thinking that if they crushed our Pacific fleet, we would be, first of all, the devastation of that would force us to ruin, and that we would have to rebuild the Navy to go after the Japanese. And they figured that would buy them 2 to 3 years' time. They also thought that maybe we couldn't stomach the loss, and we would just be like, okay, stop hitting us, leave us alone, go do whatever you want in Southeast Asia. Well, they were wrong on both accounts. They hit Pearl Harbor, there were no flat tops. They hit a bunch of battleships, yes, a lot of people died, but most of the battleships were outdated, old derelicts, maybe close to being a derelict. Most of them were repaired. Then we took boots to ass. That all happened in the last century. Then we ended all world wars with the advent of the atomic bomb. That changed the world completely. Then we had the Cold War. Then we had police action wars, which were just proxy wars of the Cold War. Korea, Vietnam. Even Russia had their own stupid proxy war. Afghanistan, before we got there. Then there was the Falklands War. Then there was the South American drug wars and the capture of Manuel Noriega. I know that one specifically because the older brother of a friend I grew up with participated in that, as did my coworker George. Some of you may know him because he has elevated the word fuck to an art form. He can use it even as a comma. Anyway, if you think about all those things, yeah, I think that the world has changed quite a bit, but it's also gotten a whole lot smaller with transcontinental aircraft, the jet engine, the rocket, um, the internet, mass media and television, all these things, easily, right? And he was saying that, you know, this war and this siege against Kyiv is going to be witnessed on a scale never seen before. Because now we have Starlink on theater. We have citizens with cell phones. We have Twitter. We have Facebook. We have, what's that one with the octopus? Snapchat. We got all those things, right? And everybody can instantly become a journalist with their camera phone. And we're about to witness the raising of a 2,000-year-old city with a rich history, regional history, that is, all because of some asshole that's a Cold War relic wanting to cement his legacy. With a military where half his conscripts never knew communism or socialism. Like, that's the part that blows my mind. That guy is yesterday, and the majority of his military is tomorrow. And because his officer corps are KGB and FSB leftovers, and because the infantry swore the oath, they blindly follow it. There's no room for a coup. Not that I can see so far. Anyway, but he was saying that, you know, you'll see a lot of citizens dying. He's now reaching a point where he's truly a war criminal. These are the things we do not tolerate in society. We shouldn't anymore. And you're going to see that with television. It's going to be very clear. This is the fight, the culminating fight. I think this coming week is going to be crucial for the survival of Ukraine. And if Zelensky can hold on, he will break the back of Putin. Otherwise, you will see the break between. Instead of the East and West Germany, you may end up seeing, and it's not you, it's you, me, and everybody, we may see East and West Ukraine. Unconventional warfare forces the rest of his life. They're just not going to quit. Now, it's because of Russians we had an East and West Germany. There was a Cold War. It lasted, what, almost 30 years? And yet, here we are again. What was old is new again. Remember me saying that in episode 1 of this? There may be an East and West Ukraine. Donetsk and the Luhansk area may separate. They may be able to administer half this country. We don't know that yet. I really hope the civilized world does not allow another nation to split and to create a second Cold War over one asshole in Russia. Because once he's dead, and once Medvedev is put away, there's nobody left in Russia that wants that anymore. The people don't want it. They have a leader who is a political prisoner, Navalny. He doesn't want it. It's the hope of the Western world that once Putin and Medvedev are no longer a factor, that a guy like Navalny could finally... This is a twofold thing. The world can put Russia in its place once and for all geopolitically. We could smack it down and say, you will never be a totalitarian communist bag of shit again. But because we understand the youth of your country never wanted it, we leave it. There's a saying at the end of the Olympics, right? We will convey in 4 years when the world's youth will come and shine and bring to light a whole new generation of humanity. Something like that. I'm just paraphrasing. And I think that once Putin and Medvedev are gone, and a guy like Navalny can take over, he could say the same thing. I call upon the youth of I call upon the youth of the Russian Federation to claim and take this country by the hand and lead it back into a golden era of capitalism. The world that you only ever knew being born into the post-Russia Soviet world. And then we can embrace them as a Western society if they want to be that. But as long as Putin's alive, ain't gonna happen. And I find it shocking that one man can control all of that and withhold that and suppress that. He's trying to hold back a dam that's about to collapse on him. And yet, somehow, he's still strong enough to do it. That little bastard's actually pretty strong, ain't he? For now. Anyway, whatever. Let's move on. We're almost done. I promise you. We're almost done. Okay. We have reached Saturday. The Kellogg interview was 1 o'clock a.m. Saturday, Ukrainian time. An hour later, in our neck of the woods, so it's now 6:13 my time, 7:13 Washington time, also 2:13 a.m. Ukrainian time. And I think this was post facto. I've got a picture for you here somewhere. I swear I put it in here. Did I? Did I forget? Oh, shit. Hang on. Let me give it to you. I'll get it for you. Just gonna bear with me a second. Here you go. I don't know how I missed that one. But there you go. I got it in there. Just in the nick of time. This came for the President of the United States at POTUS. Blue check mark and everything. 2:13 a.m. Ukrainian time. Biden. Direct confrontation between Russia and NATO would mean World War III. Now, I sat there and watched this interview. He was basically at the DNC Roman orgy today, and he was leaning on the podium, and he goes, I want to be. This is the quote here. I want to be clear. We will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full might of a united and galvanized NATO. We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. Wait, you just said you would defend everything. Oh, that's right. Ukraine hasn't been left into NATO. Way to abandon your bros. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III, and that's something we must strive to prevent. He literally just signed the death warrant of Ukraine. He had just declared they will never become a part of NATO while he's in office. He said the quiet part out loud. Okay, whatever. Fuck him. Last story of the day. We made it, guys. All of you made it. Thank you for being here this long. I'll put this out here right now. It's a short tweet, but this was a pretty interesting story because it happened just before we were getting ready to go on air. Now, I recorded this at 6:32, which would have been 2:32 a.m. Saturday. So we're already touching into day 17's information. So we will pick up tomorrow past this story. There are videos circulating all over social media Friday night, captured what are believed to be rocket attacks being fired on the Black Sea town of Mykolaiv. Russian forces repeatedly began targeting the coastal town, which is nearby the city of Odessa, hitting civilian areas, according to a post from the local politician Vitaly Kim through Telegram. I'm guessing that's an app, not an actual telegram. Videos posted online showed very heavy rocket barrages, with one tweet explaining that the city is now currently under mass attack. Mykolaiv lies to the west of Kherson, which had already been taken by Russian forces and is believed to be an important strategic position on the way toward potentially capturing Odessa. It's a city of almost 1 million people. It's also the last port city on the Black Sea that the Ukrainians have left. Under control, that is. The attack comes as Odessa's mayor says that Russian forces could soon surround the city on 3 fronts and believes that his city could soon be completely cut off from the rest of Ukraine. News of the attack comes hours after the Pentagon said that Russian forces are building momentum as they inch closer to the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. There's Russian bombardment and shelling going on quite violently as we speak. Pentagon spokesperson Admiral John Kirby told reporters on Friday, and we do assess that the Russians are beginning to make more momentum on the ground towards Kyiv, particularly from the east. What he is saying is that we and the rest of the world are witnessing the slow, grinding, crushing execution of a fledgling democracy. And either we are powerless to stop it, or we are deliberately letting it die. Because this administration had only planned for what they would do if the Russians won. They had never planned on what to do if the Ukrainians could hold out and the Russians lost. We believed in our intelligence community before this started. We drank the Kool-Aid. We thought Kyiv would fall in 3 days. We had contingency battle plans all lined up for that. It's not happening. Those people are resilient. They're brave. They have got big meaty ones. They have shown the world, like they're the US Marines of the world stage. because they've taken a weapon and they've made it legendary, right? There was a saying that Marines get the U.S. Army leftovers, and they make those leftovers legends. And you take these javelins and you take these tomahawks, and they have done things with those on a level of effectiveness that nobody thought possible. Not even our intelligence sources, not even Russian intelligence sources. They thought this country was going to be rolled in 3 days. Didn't happen. Today's 16. Tomorrow's day 17. They're still alive. They're completely surrounded in many of their cities, and they haven't died. They haven't been defeated. Their president has not been executed, even after the Wagner group of neo-Nazi Russian scum who had been sent there to kill him and his wife. They've been unsuccessful. It's going to come down to chemical and biological. And if he still can't win, it's going to come down to his stupid tactical nukes. And nobody is willing to answer the question. You probably heard it all day for days. Will the world get involved if biological, chemical, or nuclear weapons are used in Ukraine? Nobody will answer that. But I will answer this. I'm going to play this. Because I have run out of stories, and as promised, I kept it under 2 hours. So anyway, I want to take the time to thank you all for watching. I want to thank Scott for making it, and give the bird to all the other panelists that didn't. But, you know, it's Friday. They probably have shit to do. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlists, see if my other interests might be of interest to you. As promised, there will be a new Pwnery's gun review on Sunday. I've already recorded it, I'll just upload it. But for now, I want to thank you all for watching. Tune in tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel, for the War Room, Day 17. We'll see you then. Later. Oh, Slava Ukrainia. Forgot. Heroyam Slava.